I'm Sophia, 32, a financial analyst from Boston. My story begins with my first home purchase at 28, a dream achieved through years of hard work and careful saving. What I never expected was for my parents to kick me out of my own house to let my golden child sister live there instead. The betrayal cut deep, but karma has a way of serving justice when you least expect it. Before I share my journey, let me know where you're watching from, hit that like button, and subscribe to hear how I reclaimed not just my house, but my dignity and peace of mind. Growing up in a middle-class suburb just outside Boston, I learned early on that nothing would come easy to me. From my earliest memories, there was always a clear distinction in how my parents Diana and Robert treated me, compared to my younger sister Jessica. While 8 years separated us, the gap in parental affection and support felt infinitely wider. Our home was comfortable, if not lavish. My father worked as a manager at a local manufacturing company, and my mother taught fourth grade at the elementary school. We had enough, but extras had to be earned. At least that was the rule for me. From the time I was 12, I babysat for neighbors' mowed lawns and took any odd job I could find. My parents insisted this would teach me the value of hard work and independence. Meanwhile, Jessica received a generous allowance just for existing. When I questioned this disparity, my mother would say, "Your sister is more sensitive than you. You know how to take care of yourself." This pattern repeated throughout our childhood. When I made honor roll, my parents would nod and say, "That's what we expect from you." When Jessica brought home a B-, they celebrated with ice cream and presents, calling her their little genius. The message was clear. My achievements were the baseline, hers were exceptional. High school brought more of the same. I joined every club and sport that might help me secure scholarships, knowing that funding my college education would largely fall on my shoulders. I remember the crushing disappointment when I was accepted to Northwestern University with only a partial scholarship. Despite my perfect GPA and extracurriculars, my parents informed me they could only contribute minimally to my education. "We need to save for Jessica's future, too," my father explained as I calculated student loan amounts at the kitchen table. "She might not get the scholarships you did." 4 years later, when Jessica graduated high school with a B average and no extracurriculars to speak of, my parents paid for her entire education at Boston University. They even bought her a car to make commuting easier. I had taken the bus throughout college, working 2 part-time jobs between classes. Despite these inequities, I persevered. I graduated with honors, secured an internship at a prestigious financial firm in Boston, and worked my way up from analyst to senior advisor within 5 years. Every step was earned through determination and grit, qualities I developed precisely because nothing was handed to me. While my career flourished, my relationship with my family remained strained. Sunday dinners at my parents' house became exercises in restraint as they lavished praise on Jessica's mediocre accomplishments while barely acknowledging my promotions or awards. Jessica had graduated and found work at a marketing agency, a job she complained about constantly, despite my parents treating her position as though she were running the company. Throughout these years, I maintained a cordial relationship with my family. I never confronted them directly about their favoritism, partly because they would deny it and make me feel petty, and partly because I'd long ago accepted that this was simply how things were. Instead, I channeled my energy into building my own life and financial independence. By my late 20s, while my peers were still struggling with student debt and living with roommates, I had managed to pay off my loans and save a substantial down payment for a house. My dream of homeownership was not just about having my own space, but about creating the stable, supportive environment I'd never had growing up. A place where I made the rules, where my achievements were acknowledged, and where I could finally feel completely at peace. Little did I know that this dream, once realized, would become the catalyst for the greatest betrayal my family would inflict upon me, as well as the unexpected resolution that would finally put things right. The day I received pre-approval for my mortgage ranks among the happiest moments of my life. After years of saving, cutting corners, and investing wisely, I was finally ready to become a homeowner at the age of 28. I spent weekends with my realtor Amanda viewing everything from tiny condos to fixer-uppers across Boston's suburbs. When we pulled up to the Colonial on Maple Street, I experienced that feeling people talk about you just know. The house wasn't perfect, a 3-bedroom, 2-bath home built in the 1940s with character and quirks. The blue exterior paint was fading slightly. The kitchen needed updating, and the backyard was overgrown. But it had beautiful hardwood floors, large windows that flooded the rooms with natural light, a fireplace in the living room, and a covered front porch that I immediately envisioned sitting on with coffee on Sunday mornings. "It's within your budget," Amanda said cautiously, "but it might need about 15,000 in repairs and updates." I walked through each room again, mentally calculating costs and envisioning improvements. The master bedroom had an attached bathroom that needed retailing. The spare bedrooms would make perfect home office and guest room spaces. The basement was unfinished, but dry and full of potential. "I want to make an offer," I said decisively. After some negotiation, my offer was accepted. The inspection came back with only minor issues, and 60 days later, I stood in the empty living room, keys in hand, overwhelmed with pride and excitement. This was mine, earned through my own hard work, without family support or connections. The feeling was indescribable. The first month was a flurry of activity. I took a week off work to replace outdated light fixtures, and deep clean every surface. Friends helped me move furniture and hang curtains. I splurged on a new mattress and quality kitchen appliances, knowing these were investments in my daily comfort and home value. Slowly, the house transformed. The living room walls changed from beige to a soft sage green. The kitchen cabinets received a fresh coat of white paint and new hardware. I installed floating shelves for my book collection and hung artwork I'd collected over the years. Each change, no matter how small, filled me with satisfaction. 3 months after moving in, I hosted a housewarming party. Friends from work, college classmates, neighbors, and of course, my family gathered to celebrate. I prepared a spread of appetizers and desserts, set up a small bar in the dining room, and gave tours of my newly renovated spaces. My colleagues were genuinely impressed, offering compliments on everything from my design choices to my financial savvy for buying in an up-and-coming neighborhood. My neighbors brought welcome gifts and shared contact information. Even my boss attended, briefly raising a toast to my accomplishment. My parents' reaction, however, was notably subdued. My mother walked through each room with pursed lips, pointing out issues I hadn't addressed yet. "The guest bathroom tiles are outdated," she commented, "and this wallpaper border in the kitchen needs to go." My father focused on all the potential problems. "Have you checked the foundation? Houses this age often have settlement issues, and that tree in the backyard looks too close to the house. You'll want to remove it before it damages the roof." Jessica arrived late as usual, with her boyfriend Tyler in tow. She circled the house with an expression I couldn't quite read, touching surfaces and examining fixtures. "It's cute," she said finally, in a tone that suggested she was surprised by this fact. "Really cute, actually. I didn't think you'd have such good taste, Sophia. Must be nice to afford your own place." The undercurrent of jealousy was unmistakable, though she masked it with compliments. Tyler seemed genuinely impressed, asking questions about the neighborhood and property values that Jessica quickly diverted. Despite my family's lukewarm response, the party was a success. As guests departed, several friends lingered to help clean up, remarking on how warm and welcoming the house felt. "It suits you," my friend Rachel said. "It's practical but inviting, just like you." In the year that followed, I settled into a comfortable routine. Weekdays were devoted to work weekends, to home improvements, and building connections in my community. I joined the neighborhood association, participated in local cleanup events, and hosted small dinner parties. My confidence grew, along with my sense of belonging. At work, my consistent performance earned me another promotion and raised, further solidifying my financial stability. I established an emergency fund, continued contributing to retirement accounts, and even began planning for future investments. Everything was proceeding exactly as I'd worked so hard to achieve. Then came the family visits. At first, they were brief Sunday afternoon drop-ins. My mother would bring baked goods and offer unsolicited decorating advice. My father would inspect my recent repairs with skepticism. Jessica rarely came, citing her busy social life, though she occasionally asked to borrow items, clothes, kitchen appliances, even furniture for her apartment. What I didn't realize then was how closely they were observing not just my home, but the life I'd built for myself. The independence I'd worked so hard to achieve was becoming the very thing they would try to take from me. The call came on a Tuesday evening in March, just as I was preparing dinner after a particularly demanding day at work. My mother's voice had that forced cheerfulness that immediately put me on edge. "Sophia, darling, we need to have a family meeting this weekend. Something important has come up with Jessica. Can you come over for dinner on Saturday?" Experience had taught me that family meetings invariably involve some crisis of Jessica's that everyone was expected to help solve. Still, I agreed, mentally rearranging my weekend plans to accommodate this unexpected obligation. When I arrived at my parents' house that Saturday, the atmosphere was tense. My father paced the living room while my mother fussed unnecessarily with the table settings. Jessica sat on the couch, eyes red from crying, checking her phone obsessively. Over a dinner that no one really ate, the story emerged. Jessica and Tyler had broken up after 3 years together. According to her, it was a complete shock when he suddenly ended things. Only after considerable prodding from my father did she admit that Tyler had discovered she'd been exchanging inappropriate texts with her coworker. "It wasn't even serious," she insisted, dabbing at her eyes with a napkin. Tyler completely overreacted. What complicated matters beyond the relationship drama was that Jessica and Tyler had been sharing an apartment for which Tyler paid the majority of rent. With the breakup, Jessica had been asked to move out within 30 days, as the lease was in Tyler's name, and she couldn't afford the rent alone. "So," my mother said, finally getting to the point of the meeting, "we need to figure out where Jessica will live." My father cleared his throat. "Your mother and I have discussed it, and we think the most sensible solution is for Jessica to move in with you temporarily." The statement hung in the air while I processed what I was hearing. "With me, in my house, just for a few months," my mother added quickly, "until she can find a place of her own and get back on her feet." I looked at Jessica, who was now studying me with hopeful eyes. "Why can't she stay here with you? You have the space." My parents exchanged glances. "We've converted your old bedroom into your father's home office," my mother explained, "and the guest room is too small for all of Jessica's things." "My house isn't that big either," I pointed out, "and I use the spare bedrooms for my office and guests." "But you live alone in a 3-bedroom house," my father said, his tone suggesting I was being unreasonably selfish. "Family helps family, Sophia. Your sister is going through a difficult time." The conversation continued in this vein with my parents, employing every guilt tactic in their arsenal. "Jessica would do the same for you," my mother insisted, though we all knew that was unlikely. "It's only temporary," my father repeated, without defining what temporary meant. When I suggested helping Jessica find an affordable apartment or roommate situation, my ideas were dismissed as impractical. When I mentioned that Jessica's salary should cover a modest place, my mother sighed dramatically about the impossible housing market. As the evening wore on, I found myself cornered by their united front. The familiar family dynamic reasserted itself, Jessica in crisis, my parents mobilizing to rescue her, and me expected to accommodate their plans without question. Finally, feeling the weight of their collective expectation, I offered a compromise. "3 months," I said firmly. "She can stay for 3 months maximum. She needs to pay some rent. I'll take a third of what she paid Tyler, and she needs to respect my space and property." Jessica immediately agreed, her relief palpable. "Thank you so much, Soph. You won't even know I'm there. I promise I'll be the perfect roommate." My parents beamed with satisfaction, congratulating themselves on raising such a generous daughter. My father patted my hand. "We knew we could count on you." As I drove home that night, a sense of unease settled over me. I'd worked so hard to create my own sanctuary, and now I was allowing that boundary to be crossed. Still, I reasoned it was only for 3 months. I could manage anything for 3 months. And perhaps this arrangement would even improve my relationship with Jessica, giving us a chance to develop the adult sisterly bond we'd never quite achieved. How wrong I was on all counts. Jessica arrived at my house the following weekend with what appeared to be every possession she'd accumulated since childhood. Her small sedan made 4 trips each time, packed to the ceiling with clothes, shoes, makeup, electronics, and knickknacks. My parents helped bringing additional boxes in their SUV. By Sunday evening, my once spacious guest bedroom and part of my home office were overtaken by Jessica's belongings. "I thought you were bringing just the essentials," I said, surveying the chaos. "This looks like everything you own." Jessica shrugged. "I wasn't sure what I'd need. Don't worry, I'll organize it all." The first 2 weeks were relatively peaceful with only minor irritations. Jessica kept different hours than I did, staying up late watching TV, while I tried to sleep before my early morning commute. She used my expensive shampoo and face creams without asking, leaving the containers nearly empty. She'd forget to lock the door when leaving, or return later than she said she would, causing me needless worry. Still, I tried to be understanding. Adjusting to a new living situation takes time, and Jessica had just experienced a significant upheaval in her life. We were finding our rhythm as housemates, I told myself. Things would improve. By the 1 month mark, however, it was clear that Jessica had no intention of being a considerate roommate. The minor infractions escalated into flagrant disregard for my home and boundaries. I came home one evening to find 6 strangers in my living room drinking my wine and leaving wet glasses on my wooden coffee table. Jessica had invited friends over without warning me and given them free rein of the house. When I expressed my displeasure, she accused me of being uptight. "It's just a few friends," she said dismissively. "We're celebrating Allison's promotion. You can join us if you want." "That's not the point," I explained, trying to keep my voice level. "This is my home. You need to ask before inviting people over." Jessica rolled her eyes. "Fine. Next time I'll text you." The kitchen became a perpetual disaster zone. Jessica would cook elaborate meals and leave the cleanup for later, which often meant the next day or until I couldn't stand the mess anymore. Dishes piled in the sink, food scraps collected on counters, and mysterious sticky spots appeared on the floor. The bathroom we shared was equally problematic. Her makeup, hair products, and clothing created an ever-expanding territory on every available surface. My organized, peaceful home was transforming into a chaotic living space that no longer felt like mine. When the first rent payment came due, Jessica asked for an extension. "I had some unexpected expenses this month," she explained vaguely. "I'll pay you next week, I promise." Next week became next month. My attempts to discuss the issue were met with tears or anger, followed by calls from my parents, questioning why I was harassing Jessica about money when she was still recovering from her breakup. The most frustrating aspect was Jessica's complete lack of effort to find her own place. When I asked about her housing search, she'd provide vague answers about looking into options or having a few leads. Yet I never saw her researching apartments online or making calls to potential landlords. As the 3-month deadline approached, I decided to have a serious conversation with her. I chose a Sunday morning when we were both home, sitting her down at the kitchen table with coffee. "It's been almost 3 months," I began carefully. "We agreed this would be temporary. Have you started looking for your own place?" Jessica stirred her coffee, avoiding my gaze. "Actually, I was thinking I might stay a bit longer. This arrangement is working out great, don't you think? And it's silly for me to pay for an apartment when you have all this space." "This arrangement was always meant to be temporary," I reminded her. "I value my privacy and space. I need to know when you're planning to move out." Jessica's expression shifted from casual to wounded in an instant. "Wow, I didn't realize you hated having me here so much. Sorry for being such a burden." "That's not what I said," I responded, feeling the familiar trap of Jessica's emotional manipulation. "I'm just asking about your plans as we agreed." "Well, I don't have plans yet," she snapped. "Some sister you are trying to throw me out when I have nowhere to go." The conversation devolved from there, with Jessica alternating between tears and accusations. When reasoning failed, she resorted to calling our parents, who predictably took her side. My mother called within the hour, chiding me for upsetting Jessica. "She's still fragile from the breakup," my mother insisted. "Why are you pushing this now? Surely you can accommodate her a little longer." No matter how I tried to explain my position, my family painted me as the villain. The deadline came and went with no change in Jessica's status or attitude. In fact, she seemed to become more entrenched, treating my home increasingly as her own domain. The stress began affecting my work and health. I had trouble sleeping, developed tension headaches, and found myself staying late at the office to avoid going home. My sanctuary had become a source of anxiety, and I felt powerless to reclaim it without seeming like the heartless sister my family now portrayed me as. As the fourth month of Jessica's temporary stay began, my parents' visits increased. They would drop by unannounced ostensibly to check on Jessica, but invariably ending up criticizing some aspect of my household management or relationship with my sister. "Jessica says you've been very cold to her," my mother remarked during one such visit. "She feels unwelcome. Jessica hasn't paid rent in 3 months, doesn't clean up after herself, and has made no effort to find her own place." I responded, frustration mounting. "How exactly should I be treating her?" My father frowned. "We raised you to be more compassionate than this, Sophia. Family supports each other through difficult times." The irony of this statement, given their historical lack of support for me, was not lost on me. Yet I continued to endure, hoping that Jessica would eventually tire of the situation, or my parents would recognize the unfairness of their expectations. What I didn't realize was that a far greater betrayal was brewing, one that would make these boundary violations seem trivial by comparison. The day everything changed began like any other. I left for work early, navigating through Boston's morning traffic to reach my office by 8. The quarterly financial reviews were due, keeping me busy with client meetings and report preparations until well past my normal departure time. By the time I headed home, it was after 7, and all I wanted was a quiet evening to decompress. Instead, I opened my front door to find my parents' Jessica and a man I didn't recognize sitting in my living room. The stranger wore a tailored suit and had a briefcase open on my coffee table, papers spread across the surface. "What's going on?" I asked, setting down my work bag, immediately sensing something was wrong. My father stood, his expression a mixture of determination and discomfort. "Sophia, this is Howard Brennan. He's our family attorney." I looked between them, confused. "Why is our family attorney in my living room?" My mother's voice was artificially sweet. "Sit down, dear. We need to discuss some matters regarding the house." Cautiously, I took the remaining armchair, noticing how they were all positioned across from me, a united front. "What matters?" "This is my house. I own it." Howard cleared his throat. "Actually, Ms. Thompson, there are some complications regarding the ownership structure that we need to address." What followed was one of the most surreal conversations of my life. According to Howard, when I purchased the house 4 years ago, my parents had contributed a small portion toward the down payment, approximately $15,000. This was news to me. I had saved every penny myself and had the bank statements to prove it. "I never received money from you for the down payment," I said firmly. My father shifted uncomfortably. "We transferred it directly to the closing attorney. It was our gift to you, but legally it gave us a small interest in the property." Howard produced a document pointing to a section with fine print. "You signed this at closing, acknowledging a partial interest arrangement." I stared at the paper, vaguely remembering signing countless documents during the closing process, but certainly not agreeing to give my parents ownership interest. The closing had been rushed, the attorney explaining each document briefly as I signed, trusting the process. "So what exactly are you saying?" I asked, though I was beginning to understand the horrifying direction this was heading. My mother took over, her tone simultaneously sympathetic and firm. "We've decided it would be best if you sold the house to us. We're prepared to offer you the original purchase price." "The original purchase price?" I repeated incredulously. "The property value has increased by almost 30% since then." "Given the family circumstances," Howard interjected smoothly. "Your parents feel this is a fair arrangement. They did help with the down payment after all." Family circumstances. I looked directly at Jessica, who at least had the decency to look slightly ashamed. "You mean letting Jessica live here permanently?" My father nodded. "Your sister needs stability right now. You're financially secure with your high-paying job. You can easily find another place to live." The full weight of their betrayal crashed down on me. They weren't just extending Jessica's stay, they were trying to take my house entirely. The house I had saved for, renovated, and made my own. The house that represented my independence from their favoritism and control. "This is insane," I said, my voice shaking with anger. I'm not selling my house, not to you, not to anyone. Howard cleared his throat again. I'm afraid that if you refuse, your parents are prepared to take legal action based on their interest in the property. The litigation could be lengthy and expensive. And while that's ongoing, my mother added, Jessica will continue living here. The court would likely prevent any changes to the living arrangement until ownership is resolved. They had thoroughly planned this ambush using a tenuous legal claim to force me into an impossible position. I looked at each of their faces, my father's stern resolution, my mother's practiced concern, Jessica's barely concealed triumph, and Howard's professional detachment. You have 60 days to make arrangements to move out, my father said as if the matter was settled. We'll handle the property transfer through Howard. This is my home, I said, standing up, no longer able to contain my emotions. I worked for this, I saved for this, I didn't take handouts or expect others to solve my problems. How can you do this to me? My mother's response cut deeper than anything else that evening. You've always been able to take care of yourself, Sophia. You're strong and independent. Jessica needs more support than you do. She always has. So I'm being punished for being responsible? I asked incredulously. No one's punishing you, my father replied. We're just asking you to help your sister as family should. By giving her my house. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Jessica finally spoke up. Don't be so dramatic, Sophia. It's just a house. You can buy another one. In that moment, looking at my family, I realized that they had never seen me truly. To them, I was not a daughter or sister deserving of the same love and consideration as Jessica. I was a resource to be tapped when Jessica needed something expected to give endlessly, while receiving nothing in return. The argument that followed was heated and painful. Words were said that couldn't be taken back. My parents accused me of selfishness and lack of family loyalty. I accused them of lifelong favoritism and manipulation. Jessica alternated between playing the victim and making snippy comments about my overreaction. By the time they finally left with Howard, promising to send formal documentation of their demands, I was emotionally exhausted. I sat alone in my living room, the home I had lovingly created, now feeling tainted by their presence and demands. That night, as I lay awake processing the day's events, I made a decision. I would not allow them to take what was rightfully mine, not without a fight. If they wanted to use legal means to steal my home, then I would use every legal resource available to defend it. The next morning, I called in sick to work for the first time in years. I had more important matters to attend to, finding my own attorney and developing a strategy to counter my family's unconscionable betrayal. The morning after my family's ambush, I sat at my kitchen table with a cup of coffee, my hands still shaking slightly from the shock and anger. My mind raced with questions and emotions, but beneath the turmoil, a sense of resolve was forming. I would not be bullied out of my own home without exploring every possible option. My first call was to Rachel, my closest friend, who happened to work for a law firm specializing in real estate. Her reaction to my story moved from disbelief to outrage. "This is beyond dysfunctional," she said. "Let me connect you with Marcus Delgado. He's the best property attorney I know." 2 hours later, I sat in Marcus's office, having brought every document related to my home purchase bank statements, the closing paperwork, mortgage documents, and property tax records. Marcus, a sharp-eyed man in his 50s, reviewed everything methodically. "There are several issues with your parents' claim," he said finally. "First, I see no record of their $15,000 contribution in any of the financial documentation. Second, this partial interest agreement they're citing is highly unusual in its wording and application. Third, even if they did contribute to the down payment claiming ownership interest 4 years later after you've been the sole resident and made all payments is legally questionable." His words gave me the first glimmer of hope I'd felt since the previous evening. "So they don't have a case?" "I didn't say that," Marcus cautioned. "Family property disputes can be complicated, and judges sometimes make unexpected rulings. What concerns me is that fighting this directly could drag on for months, during which your sister would likely continue living in your home." "So what do you suggest?" I asked. Marcus leaned forward. "Sometimes the best strategy isn't a frontal assault. Tell me, how well do your parents understand real estate and property law?" "Not well," I admitted. My father handles their basic finances, but they've never owned investment property or dealt with complex legal matters. And this attorney, Howard Brennan, he's their family attorney, not a real estate specialist. I nodded. Perfect, Marcus said with a slight smile. Here's what I propose we appear to comply while setting up the conditions for a counter move. Over the next hour, Marcus outlined a strategic approach. Rather than immediately challenging my parents' claim, I would appear to reluctantly accept the situation, requesting only a 90-day period to find new housing instead of their 60-day demand. During this time, I would take specific actions to strengthen my position. First, I needed to thoroughly document the current condition of the house with a professional inspection and photographs of every room system and feature. Second, I would remove all valuable and sentimental items immediately. Third, I would consult with real estate professionals to establish the true current market value of the property. Most importantly, Marcus emphasized, say as little as possible to your family about your plans. Let them believe you're reluctantly accepting their terms while we prepare our response. I left Marcus's office with a comprehensive to-do list and a renewed sense of purpose. That afternoon, I scheduled a home inspection for the following day, contacted a real estate appraiser, and began researching temporary housing options. I found a luxury downtown apartment building offering short-term leases perfect for my needs while this situation unfolded. When I returned home that evening, Jessica was watching TV in the living room, acting as if nothing extraordinary had happened the previous night. She barely looked up when I entered. "Mom and Dad want to know if you've calmed down," she said casually. "They're hoping we can handle this like adults." I bit back the sharp response that came to mind, remembering Marcus's advice. "I need some time to process everything," I said instead. "I'll be looking for a new place over the next few weeks." Jessica's expression brightened. "So, you're okay with the arrangement?" "That's great. I was thinking about repainting the kitchen once you're out. That sage green isn't really my style." Her entitlement was breathtaking, but I forced myself to nod noncommittally and retreat to my bedroom. There, I began sorting through my possessions, identifying what needed to be moved immediately and what could wait. Over the next 2 weeks, I executed Marcus's plan with precision. The home inspector provided a detailed report on the property's excellent condition with photographs and notes about recent improvements. The appraiser confirmed what I suspected: the house was now worth nearly 30% more than I'd paid, thanks to both the market and my renovations. I rented a storage unit and gradually moved my most precious belongings, my grandmother's china artwork, important documents, and irreplaceable mementos. I scheduled the movers for my furniture and larger items, timing it for when Jessica would be at work. Throughout this period, my parents called frequently, alternating between checking on my moving progress and offering patronizing reassurances that I was doing the right thing for the family. Each conversation required every ounce of self-control I possessed to maintain the facade of reluctant compliance. Jessica, meanwhile, had fully embraced her future role as the home's owner. She began moving her things into my master bedroom just to test the layout, and invited friends over for a pre-housewarming party that left the living room strewn with empty bottles and food containers. By the end of the month, I had secured the downtown apartment, moved my essential belongings, and provided Marcus with all the documentation he needed. The night before my official move-out, I conducted a final walkthrough of the house, taking detailed video of each room's condition. The following day, I handed Jessica a spare key and informed her I'd be leaving my key with the neighbors until the property transfer was finalized. My parents arrived to help smooth the transition, barely containing their satisfaction as they surveyed what they clearly considered their reclaimed property. "We've set up a meeting with Howard next week to sign the transfer documents," my father informed me. "He'll contact you with the details." I nodded, keeping my expression neutral. "I'll have my own attorney review anything before I sign." My mother frowned. "There's no need to make this more complicated, Sophia. We're being more than fair." "I'm sure you believe that," I replied, picking up my last bag. "I'll see you at the meeting." As I drove away from the house I'd loved, I felt a complex mixture of emotions: grief for what I'd lost, anger at my family's betrayal, but also a steely determination. This wasn't over, not by a long shot. Marcus had filed several motions that would soon disrupt my family's comfortable assumptions about how this would play out. In my new downtown apartment, I unpacked the essentials and stood by the floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. The view was spectacular. The amenities, luxurious things I would never have indulged in under normal circumstances. But these weren't normal circumstances, and this temporary splurge served a strategic purpose. When my family inevitably learned where I was living, it would reinforce their belief that I was moving on, accepting their terms. Nothing could be further from the truth. I was simply biding my time, waiting for the moment when Marcus would initiate the next phase of our plan. My family had taught me a painful lesson about trust and blood ties, but they had forgotten something crucial about me. I had never been handed anything easily. Everything I achieved came through persistence and strategic thinking. This situation would be no different. As I sipped a glass of wine watching the sunset over Boston, I made a silent promise to myself. I would reclaim what was rightfully mine, and in doing so, finally break the dysfunctional family patterns that had shaped too much of my life. For the next 3 months, I maintained minimal contact with my family, responding to texts and calls with brief, neutral replies. I declined Sunday dinner invitations citing work commitments or plans with friends. When pressed about the property transfer, I would simply say I was waiting to hear from Howard, knowing full well that Marcus had been strategically delaying the process through various legal maneuvers. Meanwhile, I immersed myself in my temporary new life. The downtown apartment became a symbol of my transition, a place where I could gather my strength and prepare for the battle ahead. I focused on excelling at work, earned another promotion, and expanded my professional network. I joined a kickboxing class, finding it therapeutic to channel my anger into physical activity. I surrounded myself with supportive friends who knew the full story and offered both emotional comfort and practical advice. All the while, Marcus and his team worked diligently behind the scenes, gathering evidence and building our case. What they discovered exceeded even my expectations. First, they confirmed through subpoenaed bank records that my parents had never transferred $15,000 to the closing attorney or anyone else connected to my home purchase. Their claim of contributing to the down payment was an outright fabrication. Second, the partial interest agreement Howard had presented contained irregularities that suggested it might have been altered after the original signing. The document's font changed slightly mid-paragraph in the section outlining their supposed interest, indicating possible tampering. Third, and perhaps most damaging to their case, Marcus uncovered emails between my parents and Howard discussing their plan to claim ownership interest weeks before they confronted me. These communications revealed their true intentions, not to help Jessica find stability, but to take advantage of what they perceived as a valuable asset they could claim for minimal cost. While this legal investigation proceeded, Jessica's occupation of my house was having predictable consequences. Through the neighborhood social media group I still belonged to, I received updates about what was happening at my property. Neighbors reported frequent loud parties, cars parked on the lawn, and even a small kitchen fire that required the fire department's response. More concerning were the utility notices forwarded to my apartment. Jessica had not transferred the utilities into her name as promised, and several bills were now overdue. The property taxes for the quarter had also gone unpaid, triggering a notice from the city. I documented every incident, adding it to the growing file Marcus was building. I also drove by the house occasionally, photographing external signs of neglect: the uncut lawn, overflowing garbage bins, and a broken window in the side door that remained unrepaired for weeks. 5 months after moving out, I received an unexpected call from my mother. Her voice lacked its usual confidence. "Sophia, we need to discuss the house situation," she began. "There have been some unexpected expenses." "What kind of expenses?" I asked, already suspecting the answer. She sighed heavily. "The water heater needed replacement last month, and there's an issue with the roof that's going to cost several thousand to fix. Your father and I weren't planning on these additional costs." I remained silent, waiting for her to continue. "We were thinking," she said hesitantly, "perhaps we should reconsider the purchase price. The house seems to need more work than we realized." This was the opening Marcus had predicted. My parents were discovering that homeownership involved more than just claiming a valuable property. It came with significant responsibilities and costs. That's interesting, I replied carefully. I maintained the house meticulously when I lived there. I wonder what's changed in the last few months. My mother's tone shifted to defensive. Jessica is still adjusting to homeownership. It's a learning curve. Jessica doesn't own the home yet, I reminded her. Legally, I'm still the owner, which means I'm liable for any neglect or damage occurring on the property. Well, that's why we need to finalize the transfer, she said, trying to regain control of the conversation. Howard has been trying to reach your attorney for weeks. I'll speak with Marcus about it, I promised, hiding my satisfaction. Marcus had been deliberately difficult to reach, part of our strategy to let the situation with Jessica's tenancy deteriorate. The next day, Marcus called with news that would change everything. The judge reviewing our preliminary motions had granted access to the original closing documents from the title company's archives. These records contained no mention of the partial interest agreement Howard had presented, confirming our suspicions of document tampering. This is it, Marcus said. With this evidence, plus the documentation of property neglect and the fraudulent claim about the down payment, we're in a position to not just defend your ownership, but to potentially seek damages. 1 week later, we filed our formal legal response countersuing my parents for attempted fraud documenting Jessica's destruction of property and requesting immediate eviction. The comprehensive filing included all the evidence we'd gathered over the month's statements from neighbors, photographs of property damage, unpaid utility, and tax notices, and expert testimony about the document tampering. The response from my parents' side came swiftly. Howard requested an emergency meeting, suggesting we discuss matters privately before proceeding with costly litigation. Then we agreed to meet at Marcus's office, setting the stage for what would become the resolution of this painful chapter. Howard arrived with my parents, all three looking significantly less confident than during our living room ambush months earlier. Jessica was notably absent. Marcus led us to the conference room, where enlarged copies of the falsified document bank records and damaging emails covered one wall. Before we begin, Marcus said calmly, I'd like to clarify what we're discussing today. We have evidence of attempted property fraud, document tampering conspiracy, and significant property damage currently estimated at $27,000. My father's face paled. Howard shifted uncomfortably. My mother looked between them, her composure cracking. There must be some misunderstanding, Howard began weakly. Marcus raised an eyebrow. Is it a misunderstanding that no $15,000 payment was ever made toward Ms. Thompson's down payment? Is it a misunderstanding that this document, he pointed to the partial interest agreement, was altered after the original closing, or that your clients discussed their plan to claim the property before approaching Ms. Thompson? The meeting lasted 3 hours, but the outcome was decided within the first 30 minutes. Faced with overwhelming evidence, Howard advised my parents to settle. The terms were non-negotiable. My parents would withdraw all claims to my property. Jessica would vacate the premises within 10 days, and they would pay for all damages to the house, plus my legal fees. My father initially balked at the financial implications, but Howard whispered something to him that changed his mind. I later learned he had informed them of the potential criminal charges if the document tampering was brought to the attention of the proper authorities. When the paperwork was signed and Howard led my subdued parents from the office, Marcus turned to me with a smile. Congratulations, Sophia. Your house is unquestionably yours again. The victory felt surreal. After months of uncertainty, anger, and strategic planning, I had reclaimed what was rightfully mine. But as I would soon discover, the house I returned to bore little resemblance to the home I had loved. The day I received the keys back to my house, I drove over with apprehension. Marcus had suggested having a professional cleaning service address the property first, but I needed to see for myself what had become of my once beloved home. Nothing could have prepared me for what I found. The front yard, once meticulously maintained with flower beds and trimmed hedges, resembled an abandoned lot. Beer cans and cigarette butts littered the porch. The front door showed scratch marks around the lock, as if someone had tried to force entry. Inside was worse. The hardwood floors I'd lovingly refinished were scratched and stained. The sage green walls of the living room were now marred with holes, some patched haphazardly with what looked like toothpaste. The kitchen cabinets hung crooked on broken hinges, and something sticky coated most surfaces. Upstairs, my master bedroom had been transformed into what appeared to be Jessica's personal clothing boutique, with garments strewn everywhere and makeup stains on the carpet. The bathroom tiles were cracked, the shower curtain torn down, and mold grew in corners where water had leaked and been left unaddressed. I walked through each room in stunned silence, taking photos to document the destruction. The home inspector who had assessed the property before I moved out returned the following day, providing a detailed report, estimating over $30,000 in damage, far more than my parents had agreed to pay in our settlement. When I shared this information with Marcus, he immediately filed a motion to increase the settlement amount. My parents, faced with the documentation and the threat of further legal action, reluctantly agreed to cover the full repair costs. The renovation process took nearly 2 months. I hired professional contractors to address the structural issues, replacing damaged flooring, fixing plumbing leaks, and repairing the roof that had begun to leak due to neglect. A deep cleaning service spent 3 days removing grime stains and odors that had permeated the house. During this period, I continued living in my downtown apartment, visiting the property regularly to oversee the work. Each visit brought mixed emotions. While I was legally victorious emotionally, I struggled with the knowledge that my own family had not only attempted to take my home, but had allowed it to be destroyed through neglect and misuse. I had no contact with Jessica during this time. According to my one remaining line of communication, a distant cousin I occasionally texted, she had moved in with a friend and was telling everyone her side of the story, which apparently cast me as the villain who had evicted her out of spite. My parents made one attempt at contact, sending an email that oscillated between defensive justification and half-hearted apology. "We only wanted what was best for the family," they wrote, seemingly unable to recognize that I was part of that family too. I didn't respond. As the renovations neared completion, I faced a difficult decision: return to the house or sell it and start fresh elsewhere. The property held both wonderful memories of my independence and painful associations with betrayal. After much reflection, I decided to sell. The real estate market had continued to strengthen, and my property, with its newly renovated features, received multiple offers within days of listing. I accepted an offer significantly above asking price, providing me with a substantial profit after accounting for the renovation costs covered by my parents' settlement. With these funds, I purchased a beautiful townhouse in a different neighborhood closer to my office, and in a community known for its strong sense of connection. The new property reflected my evolved taste and priorities, with an open floor plan home office and rooftop deck perfect for entertaining the friends who had supported me throughout this ordeal. The sale of my former house and purchase of my new home coincided with another positive development: my promotion to department director at work. My focus during the months of legal battle had actually accelerated my career growth as I channeled my energy into professional excellence. 6 months after the settlement, I received an unexpected letter from Jessica. Unlike our parents' defensive email, hers contained what seemed like genuine reflection. "I know an apology isn't enough for what happened," she wrote. "I took advantage of your generosity and participated in something that was fundamentally wrong. The last few months have been a wake-up call. I'm working now on becoming financially independent, and I've started therapy to understand why I've relied on others to solve my problems. I don't expect forgiveness, but I wanted you to know that I recognize the harm I caused." I didn't respond immediately, needing time to process whether this represented genuine growth or another manipulation. Eventually, I sent a brief acknowledgement, making no promises, but leaving the door slightly open for possible communication in the future on my terms. My parents took longer to reach out meaningfully. A year after the settlement, my father called, his voice lacking the authority it once held. "Your mother and I have been doing some thinking," he said hesitantly. "We didn't treat you fairly, not just with the house situation, but for many years before that. We're seeing a family counselor to understand our patterns better." This conversation marked the beginning of a very slow, cautious rebuilding of our relationship. I maintained firm boundaries, declining invitations to holiday gatherings that first year, and insisting on meeting in public places rather than at their home or mine. Over time, as they demonstrated consistent respect for my boundaries, our interactions became less strained. The experience transformed me in profound ways. I became more discerning about all my relationships, recognizing unhealthy dynamics more quickly, and valuing those who supported me without conditions. I developed a deeper appreciation for chosen family, the friends who stood by me when my biological family failed. My new home became the center of this chosen family community. I hosted dinner parties, holiday gatherings, and weekend brunches, creating the warm, supportive environment I had always craved. I joined community organizations, volunteered locally, and built connections that enriched my life beyond career success. Jessica and I eventually established a cautious relationship, not the close sisterly bond that might have been, but a respectful association based on her continued demonstration of personal growth. She completed her therapy, secured a better job, and even purchased her own small condo, achieving the independence she had avoided for so long. Looking back at this challenging chapter of my life, I recognize that the true value wasn't in reclaiming a physical house, but in claiming my self-worth. I learned that establishing and maintaining boundaries isn't selfish. It's essential for healthy relationships. I discovered that while family connections are important, they must be based on mutual respect rather than obligation or guilt. Most importantly, I realized that sometimes the most loving thing you can do for yourself and others is to stand firm in your truth even when it's difficult. By refusing to be the family doormat any longer, I ultimately gave my parents and sister the opportunity to grow and change patterns that had damaged us all. Today, as I sit on my rooftop deck, watching the sunset over my new neighborhood, I feel a sense of peace that once seemed impossible. The journey wasn't easy, but it led me to a home that's truly mine, not just in legal terms, but in the deepest sense of belonging and security. What's your experience with family dynamics and boundaries? Have you ever had to stand up for yourself against people who should have supported you? I'd love to hear your stories in the comments below. Don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share with anyone who might need encouragement to stand firm in their own worth. Thank you for listening to my journey, and remember, sometimes the fastest path to healing is simply refusing to be hurt anymore.